I think I agree with you. I think that the prevailing mindset in the general zeitgeist of freelancing is that work happens to you. And so if that's the thing that you believe, or if that's a thing that you live by, then you're just in reaction mode all the time. Right? And if you're in reaction mode all the time, it means that you're not choosing things intentionally. And I'm a big believer in intention. I'm a big believer in choice. I think that if you believe that work happens to you, then you have no choice but to do it when it comes.
Welcome to Fractional. This is your host, Alexis Collado, co-founder at Swarm. Our goal here is to help you carve your own path by interviewing top builders, makers, independents, designers, and engineers all around the world. Hear the stories of people living the fractional life. For today's guest, we have Dan Mall. He's a husband, dad, teacher, creative director, designer, founder, and entrepreneur from Philly. He runs Design System University, where he is creating, collecting, and curating curriculum, content, and community to help enterprise teams design at scale. Previously, Dan ran design system consultancy Superfriendly for over a decade. We talk about Dan's network-based model for Superfriendly, creating leveling and growth paths for freelancers, intentionality behind your freelance work lifestyle, his top 2 tips for new freelancers, figuring out what he wants as he continues his fractional journey, the commodification of designers in the advent of AI, figuring out your value, and a lot more. Enjoy the show. People obviously know you. You are like one of the legends in the industry, and like you probably will deny that, but maybe introduce yourself for our guests.
You're right. I will deny. I don't know what a legend in our industry is, but so my name is Dan Mall. I am a husband and a dad and a designer and a creative director and an entrepreneur. I've run many businesses. I've done a lot of work in design over the last 2 decades, I guess, a little bit more than that. And I currently am the founder of Design System University, which is an organization to spread curriculum and content about design systems to help people design at scale.
I know you for having built Superfriendly, right? It's like a 1 decade long run company, and the way you pitched it to me originally, because we talked about this for a while, was that it was a digital business where you can play the matchmaker, right, for every project. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Superfriendly, the way that I described Superfriendly for a long time was it was a design collaborative. And I don't think collaborative in that way as a noun is an actual word, right? So like it's a little bit of a co-opted phrase. But the idea was that I was the only full-time employee. And if there was a way that I couldn't be a full-time employee, I would have done that. I just figured we needed somebody to be a full-time employee. And what we did as a team was we would pull together the right people for any project that we were doing. And so that took many forms over the 10 years that I was doing it. It definitely evolved. As I thought deeper about it, as we experimented with more things, as our clients needed different things. But basically we had a network of, I think it was like 700 people, something like that. And we operated at a particular capacity of that network to really bring together ad hoc teams for clients, and then would disband those teams, after a project or an account was finished.
700 like moonlighters, fractional workers, and freelancers. How do you become the matchmaker?
So it's difficult. I mean, one of the things that I particularly have a superpower in, and this was before I started Superfriendly, was I think I'm a collector of people. I like talking to people. I like being up to date and interested in what they are doing. And because I think I'm curious or nosy or, whatever the trait is. I just like seeing what people are doing because it inspires me. And so even, long before Superfriendly, I had a habit of every day I would try to email 2 or 3 people that I'd never met before, whose work I would come across, whether that's on, Dribbble or Behance or Twitter or, whatever before that, just finding people's portfolios and just sending them an email and being like, I think your work is awesome. Like, thanks for making my day, and sharing your work, without any agenda. And then over time it evolved into, as I started to have this agency and this collective, this collaborative, then my agenda changed, which is like, I love your work. Maybe we could work together on something someday, and just kind of leaving it at that. And some people, would politely be like, nah, not really my bag. And then other people would be like, that would be great. Like that fits what I'm trying to do too. And, that kind of created the conditions for collaboration. So I think a lot of it is predicated on the fact that like I was going to do that anyway, so I figured I might as well start a business around doing that too.
So you're one of, to me, like the originators of a network-based digital business, at least around that time. That's like, 2010s or something. And I was doing my research on you, and I've obviously interviewed you in the past, but you said this. I believed freelancers could simultaneously operate independently and still have career paths, growth trajectories, and community. I believed all of those things fit together under one business model pretty well. Like, why don't you tell me?
Oh,
more
100%.
about
I
this?
think so. First, I certainly don't claim ownership over the idea of a network-based business. I was inspired by lots of other people who were doing that before me. So, Superfriendly certainly stood on the shoulders of the giants who have experimented with different flavors of that kind of business. So, credit where that's due. One of the things that I was finding was there was this dichotomy, and still is today, I think, to a large extent, of people who are freelancers and they just are like, I'm a hired gun. That's what I do. And they commit to certain things mentally, which I don't think are true or don't have to be true, which is like, so I'm not going to have, performance reviews with anyone, like, because I'm a freelancer. So I don't have a manager. I don't have a boss. And for some people that's a good thing. And for other people, they miss out on stuff because they're like, I don't have a team that I work with. And then on the other side of that, if you work in-house or you work for an agency or work for a team or whatever that is, people then they sacrifice independence. They go, well, I'll give up some of my independence to be able to, work with a team and have performance reviews and have people help me grow my career and mentorship and benefits and things like that. And, for a while I just thought like, why do those two things have to be mutually exclusive? And that became my hypothesis and my mission, for a while, which is like, I want to figure out how those two things fit together. So even with a collective based business, one of the first steps was, well, what if we just had growth paths for our freelancers? They don't have to grow with us, but that doesn't mean they're not growing. Like, so for the time that they're here, why not give them places that they can, where they can level up, and if they level up and then leave and go to some other agency, well, that's the point. That's the business model. And so, we started to experiment with like, how do those things fit together, and found that a lot of those actually do fit together. They don't have to be mutually exclusive.
So you're aligning incentives and merging the best of
Absolutely.
both
Because
worlds,
the incentives
right?
are so varied.
And
It's some people are incentivized by cash, some people are incentivized by independence, some people are incentivized by collaboration, some people are incentivized by mentorship, either being a mentor or being mentored. So that's the thing that unlocked all of it, which is like we can change the incentive based on the person. Some people would do a project for free to be able to work with a specific person, or a specific client. Some people are like, I'm not going to work on anything unless I get paid major money because I'm trying to save for a house or whatever the financial incentive. So, that's the thing. That's also the thing that unlocked it, is just realizing that like we can change incentives and perhaps serve people differently, serve our super friends differently, if we can do that.
a lot of what you talk about stems from your own belief, right? That you want to match the opportunities to what people are good at and what their motivations and priorities are at the current moment. And I would actually want to ask you, like, usually freelancing or starting up your own shop and deciding to go fractional, and heck, you hired like a ton of fractional people. Why did you choose to go that path, right? Was it the freedom, as you've talked about, or was it, working with different clients? I mean, you're a consultant. You worked with Nike, ExxonMobil, Compass, United Airlines, and a lot more clients. So what are
So
your thoughts
a couple
on
of different threads on that. Some of it is born of belief, and then some of it is born of trauma and perceived trauma. So like what I mean by that is, when I started Superfriendly, it was really just a front for me freelancing. Right? I didn't want to trade under the name Dan Mall. I wanted to trade under a company name because I had some beliefs about that would be better somehow. I don't know if those were true, but that's what I believed at the time. And what I started to miss was working with other people, because prior to that, all of my career had been working at agencies. So I love working with other people. I loved working on a team. I always thought that one of my strengths was being a team player, not necessarily being a leader or being the person or anything like that. Like, I'm actually not very good independently. I've grown that over time, but I never believed that was like a skill that I was born with. So I liked working with people, and I was like, so being a freelancer, does that mean that I don't get to work with people that I enjoy? Like, unless maybe the client hires me alongside some other freelancer. Like, that doesn't feel like the only way that this could happen. There feels like there's a lot of other vehicles for that. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is, running an agency is hard. And I've been part of agencies and seen agencies and consulted with agency owners who, it's hard. It's a feast or famine business for a lot of agency owners. And I would see agency owners, refinance their house because they can't make payroll, and it's not because they didn't have the money. It's because a client, is paying on a 90-day net. And so I got to run payroll this week, but we don't get paid by this client for another 3 months. Like, all of that kind of stuff, and how stressful it was just to have the burden of full-time employees. And I was like, if I ever start an agency, I'm not going to have full-time employees because I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't want to have the stress of, I got to make payroll this week, and so we got to dip into our line of credit, or we got to take a bank loan, or we got to, I got to refinance my house. Any of those things could, because I think that takes a toll on people's mental health, on their physical health. I've seen it firsthand, and I was like, I don't want to be in that position if I ever run an agency. So when I started an agency, I wanted to find a different model that could ebb and flow with that feast or famine thing.
You talked about mental health, and in one of your conversations I was listening to while doing my research was that you typically do work the 9 to 5, like just generally 40 hours per week, and as a freelancer, and under the guise of Superfriendly, of course. But like, how do you explain that? That's like preposterous to a lot of different.
Well, what do you mean? Why do you say it's preposterous?
Well, I do subscribe to that idea, like just taking care of yourself and being calm and making sure you're energized for the work and just making sure that you're ready, right? But then I think the prevailing mindset for the past decade was just like, just go in, hustle, and go wild at things. And I think it's typically more of that, especially when you're alone, right? When you're a freelancer, because you have to build your own, your own network, making your own biz dev thing work, managing the admin tasks, finding your clients, actually doing the work itself.
I see. Yeah. So I think I agree with you. I think that the prevailing mindset in the general zeitgeist of freelancing is that work happens to you. And so if that's the thing that you believe, or if that's a thing that you live by, then you're just in reaction mode all the time, right? And if you're in reaction mode all the time, it means that you're not choosing things intentionally. And I'm a big believer in intention. I'm a big believer in choice. I think that if you believe that work happens to you, then you have no choice but to do it when it comes. So if a client has 60 hours of week this week, you do the 60 hours of work. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I started Superfriendly in the way that I did, is that I wanted the power dynamic to be in favor of the service provider, because I believe that that's actually where it belongs best. Why would a client tell me, a professional web designer, how to design a website when the client is not a professional web designer? That doesn't make any sense to me. Shouldn't I have the power dynamic in there? But they have the money, right? So like the power dynamic to me is flipped in there. And I wanted to flip that around. I wanted to create a dynamic that was balanced. It wasn't they had more power or we had more power or anything like that. It was they want to work with us as much as we want to work with them. And so a lot of that is kind of pendulum swinging the other way to overcompensate for it. And what I tried to do, it's to some success and some not success, is create a business where clients wanted to work with us more than we wanted to or needed to work with them. And that's a position of privilege. That's a position of leverage. But if you can manage that, some freelancers can. They manage to do that, where, a lot of freelancers are able to have people who wait to work with them, as opposed to them just trying to scramble to line up the next gig, And so we were fortunate, at least for a time, that like we had a line of clients that were waiting to work with us, more than the capacity that we had. And that gives you a lot of leverage. And that allows you to do things and say, which a lot of agencies do, whether through the fractional model or not. A lot of agencies say things like, we do a 4-day work week. which is like cool. That's a way to say we are choosing how we're going to work. And for clients who want to work with us, they have to align with that choice. If they don't align with that choice, then they don't get to work with us. And for some agencies, they live and die by that.
That's a big
Exactly. It
flex.
is a flex. And so I believe that flex comes from just a choice. I don't think it's you bend over backwards for clients and then one day you get to dictate your terms, once you have the leverage. Because once you set that precedent, it's hard to get out of it. So for me, back to your original question, I took the long way around it, is like I work a 40-hour work week because I want to work a 40-hour work week. And, I live with the choices. I live and die with what that choice means, the consequences of that choice. If it means I don't have enough money because clients really need me to work 60 hours a week and they won't hire me because of it, well, that's the choice that I make. And I remember talking to my wife about this a long time ago that like we had decided as a family, I would rather take a bank loan than have a client overwork me, right? I would rather not sacrifice. I would rather borrow money from my friends and family, to make payroll or to make whatever I need to, rather than be overworked and sacrifice time with my family or my friends or things like that. And that's a choice, and so, and that choice has consequences, luckily some of those consequences are positive, even though some of them are negative too.
That's a strong position on it, and I super appreciate you just sharing it out into the world. Dan, I believe you to be a person who loves teaching, and you spoke to me this way, saying that being in that situation is a position of privilege. How do you get there? Because there are a ton of new freelancers being onboarded this year. People are like offloading their employees every week, and people are wanting to join, like the fractional work lifestyle or this kind of work environment where you get to choose, right? So, what are some tips that you would offer them?
A couple things. One is, even though I say a lot that I like to teach, I say that because it's a shorthand and it's close enough to what I mean by it, but it's not fully accurate. So whenever I have the time to explain it a little bit more, generally what I say is I like to share, because teaching someone is a big responsibility, right? Like I am not in control over what a person learns. Like I would like to influence it as much as I can, but like one thing that anybody can do at any point in their career, junior, senior, VP, whatever, like just starting out, anybody can share. My kids share all the time. Students share, teachers share, like anybody can share what they're doing. And the thing about that is that it's not debatable. If you're trying to teach, people can debate with you. If you say this is the right way to do something, somebody else can say, but what about this? And they might be right and you might be wrong. But no one can debate what you share. Nobody can debate your experience. If you say, here's what I did, nobody can say, no, it's not. That's not what you did, because they don't know. They're not you. They weren't there.
No one can
Exactly right.
invalidate your
So
journey,
for me, I'm
right?
like,
So
yeah,
share
totally.
it.
So what I try to do is I try to share what I've done. Here's what's worked for me. I don't know if it'll work for you. Maybe it will. Maybe it will because it worked for me. I'm not going to go so far as to say you have to do this thing now, because what do I know about you and your life and your journey? I don't. But I can say, here's the thing that's worked for me, and I can model some of that, and I can explain some of that. I can share a lot of that. So that's one piece of it. Is I think for anybody, you want to share. We have so many platforms available to us now to do that. Share on Twitter, share on Instagram, share on your blog, share on your newsletter, share, wherever you want. Share in your own journal to yourself. Like it doesn't have to be with a large audience even. Share with your family, share with your friends. Like we have so many vehicles available to us to be able to do that. So that's thing one. And then thing two is, in order to make that a business, it's hard. That's a choice. And I think for me, one of the things that I had to do is just create runway to be able to do that. So I think anytime you want to do something, you have to invest in it in order to see it, to see it have fruition. So like there are things that I will do that I don't want to do, but it pays the bills. I don't want to consult that much, but I consult because I'm good at it and it's a skill that I have that pays the bills, so that I can do what I really want to do, which is share and teach and help people learn and those things. But I have to subsidize it somehow, And so like that could be anything, like drive for Uber, drive for Lyft, if that drive for DoorDash, like if those are the ways that you can make money to then fund your dream of whatever it is, do that thing. Like if you have to take a bank loan, if you have to, live on rice and adobo chicken for years, like do that. Like, that's not the worst thing. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't do is they go, all right, I'm going to make the leap, and they have no safety net, and then the pressure becomes really high. So I've been lucky to have some runway, not a lot of runway. It's like just enough that it gives me some pressure to like I got to figure this out, or the alternative is I got to go take a full-time job somewhere, or I got to do some more consulting, or like do video production, even though I don't know how to do like all of that kind of stuff. I think those are ways to kind of subsidize the thing that you really want to do. So I think that safety net, that runway really helps.
So number one is to share. I think that's a lot about, presenting who you are and also building your reputation in a way that doesn't get you arguments from people. Second is like build your runway, your safety net, so that you can actually live the
It gives you
lifestyle you
choices.
want. Recently, you decided to sunset Superfriendly, right? And I've read on your website that you found some space and it's the best thing that's ever happened to you.
Yeah, sure.
Tell me about that.
It's March now. I shut down Superfriendly in November, so about 6 months ago now. Is that right? Is the math right? 5 months, 6 months. And in that time, I've been trying to figure out what to do. And part of the reason that I shut down Superfriendly was, part of this that like I found that my skill and also where I am having the most fun and enjoyment and fulfillment in my career is to share the things that I know and help people learn how to do it on their own, not necessarily to do it for them. I think agencies, people who work at agencies are really good at doing things for people. I think that's really valuable, is some people just need you to do stuff for them. They want you to do stuff, whether it's that they don't know how to do it on their own or they don't have the bandwidth to do it on their own. That's why agencies and freelancers exist, is for that, is that you can do something that other people can't or won't. I have done that for a long time, so it was no longer new to me, and I like doing new things. So, I've been doing that for 10 years with my own agency. I've been doing that for 10 years before that at other people's agencies. So I'm like, I have more than scratched that itch. It's no longer an itch for me to do that anymore. What is an itch for me is actually to help people to learn how to do that stuff on their own. So I like interacting with people who want that, and so a lot of the last year of Superfriendly was trying to do that in that way. And I found that an agency wasn't the right communication vehicle for that. It's people don't know how to buy that from an agency traditionally. They buy that from a consultancy, but then that also has its own kind of problems. And so even just our terms around that in the industry is really tough. So I thought that it would be more beneficial for me to kind of shut that down and figure out how to do the thing that I really wanted to do in a different way, in a different vehicle. So that's kind of the thing that I've been exploring for the last couple of months.
And tell us about
Yeah,
your
sure.
new
So,
thing.
just launched earlier this week. I just started Design System University. And Design System University is that vehicle, I think, I don't know, it's early, but is that way for me to basically help people to learn how to do design systems on their own. Design systems in particular, I think is something that is hard to outsource. It's not impossible to do, and lots of people are doing it successfully. But I think the majority of it is, a lot of what I've seen is that it doesn't take root at organizations for as long as it needs to, because it comes from the outside, because it's hard to transplant. And so what I do now is I help in-house teams to learn how to grow a design system from scratch, from inside, as opposed to from outside. And that takes a lot of different forms. Sometimes that's courses, sometimes that's workbooks, sometimes that's consulting, sometimes that's, lots of different ways that people learn. And so I started Design System University to basically fill all of those different capacities. I think there's lots of different ways that people learn. And so how can one place house all of that stuff? So my thesis that I've been kind of exploring the last couple of months is, what would it look like if I majored in design systems? And that, as I've kind of explored that question, that's where Design System University kind of came out of.
Meeting people where they are and their learning styles, and just making sure the design system is sustainable. That's why you want to do it from the ground up, in-house, as someone who is enabling other people
Absolutely.
to do it, right? How has the journey been so far?
So good. I think it's opened a lot of doors that I didn't even know those doors existed. And I think it was because I wasn't looking there. And so it's I forget the name of the phenomenon. I think it's called the frequency effect or frequency illusion effect, something like that, where it's like, when you decide you want to buy a red car, you see a bunch of red cars on the road suddenly, and it's like, yo, where all these people buy these red cars from yesterday? And it's not because of that. It's just because you weren't looking there before. You weren't looking for it before. Now that you're looking for it, you start to see it. And so the same thing is kind of true with Design System University for me. Like because I'm looking somewhere else now, I'm having a lot of interesting conversations with people that I wasn't having before running an agency that did a similar thing. But now that I'm creating training material and helping people be self-sustaining about it, I'm having different conversations with people saying, well, this is actually a better way for us to be able to do this with our team, or me personally, at things that I'm learning a lot about, things that I'm even embarrassed that it's taken me so long to learn. Like, I only recently learned about PPP, purchasing power parity, like, because it never occurred to me that people around the world have different proportions of what they would spend on their own education, commensurate to what they earn and their living expenses. And in hindsight, obviously that's an obvious idea, but because I was never looking there and I was never looking in that way, it just never crossed my path. So like, that's just a small example of some things that now I'm going, okay, well, what are some ways that I can help people learn about this stuff in a cheaper way, or in a more accessible way, in a more cost-friendly way, and it's now opening a bunch of different things that I wouldn't have considered doing before. But now, because it's a different audience, it's a different context, it's just opening these things where I'm like, oh, we could do this, because this is a thing that actually serves a need that I was never looking for before.
I love that, as someone from the Philippines with a lower
Yeah,
GDP.
and again, I'm really embarrassed to like just have had a blind spot there for so long, especially as a person who is half Filipino. A person whose parents are immigrants. From lower GDP countries, Pakistan and the Philippines. Like, those are things that I just wasn't paying attention to. And in hindsight, I wish I was, but no time like the present to correct that.
What have you been learning about yourself, like throughout this process, right? Like, what are interesting bits that you've been learning about yourself even more?
I'm very. I was part of this journey for me, especially in the last 6 months to a year, has been just talking to a lot of people about their own experiences, and then kind of trying them on mentally and going like, what if I did that? What if I was in that person's position? Or what if I did it? Like, would that fit me? Or is that too big of a suit? Or am I just wearing shoes that are too big? And one of my friends said to me, I had a conversation with him. One of my friends said to me that the way he put it was like, yes, that's the person that I am too. He said, I am 95% intrinsically motivated, but I need 5% of extrinsic motivation. And I was like, yes, I've never heard anybody say anything like that. So I'm very driven intrinsically, but I do need a little bit of extrinsic signals for me to feel good about what I'm doing. And so one of the things that I learned in the last 6 months of Superfriendly, and I wouldn't have known this, I only know this like as a trailing indicator, is that I started to make wallpapers for my phone that said, "Are you having fun?" And obviously, in hindsight, it probably means that I wasn't having fun, And I'm very driven by having fun doing what I'm doing, even if it doesn't make a ton of money, even though it's hard in a lot of other ways. I'm like, if I'm not having fun, I think it really affects me, And again, that's a privileged position to be in. And I also think it's a choice too, to prioritize that over other things that, that can be more comfortable. So like, what I'm realizing now is I have fun when I'm learning. Doesn't matter what I'm learning, and I think that like exploring that is like, well, that makes sense why I want to teach, is because I have fun when I'm teaching, but because I have fun when I'm learning, and I actually learn a lot when I teach. And so, those are the kinds of things that I'm learning just through this experience, through therapy, through conversations with friends and family, and just kind of giving myself some space to be able to go like, what is it that I really want to do, and I think that's another thing I'm learning, is it's a hard question for people to answer. I've been asking a lot of people that lately. What do you want? And it's such a difficult question to answer, for a lot of people. And I think a lot of choices are driven by want. So if you can't even answer what you want, well, how can you make choices that are appropriate to that? So, that this is the journey that I'm in the middle of right now. I don't have a lot of conclusions about it, but I'm trying to figure out what it is I want to do, and I think a lot of things will be driven by that. And so I'm finding some inklings of the answer to that. I don't know that I have a full answer, but the journey is fun, and I think that's also what I'm learning too.
I love that for you. And asking people what you want is it is a hard question. It forces you to face your own reality and make reflections on the spot and like just confront yourself. And I admire that about you. I'm happy you have, a council of people that you can have those conversations with. How about the future, of, I guess, the design industry, maybe design systems? Do you feel any sort of dread over the open AI stuff? Like, just all these tools going to impose themselves on us and maybe replacing our jobs. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because, like, I think a lot of designers, not even freelancers, like literally full-time people, are like scared of
Yeah,
their jobs.
I think that's very real. I definitely think that's in the zeitgeist. I personally am very excited about OpenAI, about artificial intelligence in general. I totally get how it's scary as well. But one of the things that it jives with for me is in teaching design systems for the last decade and working on design systems, that was always the promise of it anyway. The promise of it was, if we can take the commoditized stuff and just put it in a box and reuse it quickly whenever we want to, then it frees us up to do a bunch of other things. And so as AI comes around, as ChatGPT, as all these different tools come around, they're doing that thing. And I'm like, yes, this is the thing that we've been planning for. This is the thing that we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for something to say, all this stuff is commoditized. And I think the scary part about it, and the stuff that's hard to realize for designers, is a lot of the stuff that we do that we believed was specialized is actually a commodity. I think that's the hard part. That's the hard realization that we have to face. Is like, yeah, I mean, I know that creating bespoke websites is a thing that I thought only I can do. Writing amazing copy, creating beautiful images. Like, I thought that was a craft of mine and a skill of mine, and it turns out it's not. And it's not that ChatGPT or Midjourney or Dolly or any of those things are making it a commodity. We're just realizing, I think, that it always has been a commodity. And I think that's a hard realization for people who have staked their livelihoods on that idea. And so I think it is going to take some time for us to come to terms with, man, what I'm doing actually is a commodity, and I think that's always been in the subtext of what we're doing. Like, that's why I think a lot of our industry has been talking a lot about certifications and unions for the last, many years, is like, we've never had a way to separate, like, yeah, I can build a website, but also so can, like, my doctor's nephew, who just learned how to use, and there's no way for a customer to know the difference between the two of us. I went to design school. I've been doing this for 20 years. Somebody's nephew learned it last week from a couple of YouTube videos. There's no way to tell the difference between the two of us. Right? We don't have that as an industry. So I think we have been trying to solve that problem unsuccessfully for a long time. So I think now it's accelerating that problem. It's bringing it to the forefront even more, and we're forced to confront it. But what I think, and what I'm optimistic for, and what I'm hopeful for, is once we can understand what truly is a commodity about what we do, then maybe we can also understand what is really special about what we do that we can't outsource to ChatGPT. I was just having this conversation with a friend the other day. He asked me, like, is there anything that surprises you about ChatGPT? And I said, yes. Like, the thing that surprised me the other day, I use it all the time, every day, 10 times maybe. Like, I use it a lot. ChatGPT lies. And I only realized it the other day. Is I put a prompt in, and I gave it a transcript that I wanted it to summarize, and it gave me a summary of the transcript. And I was looking at the summary, and I was like, these lines in the summary, where are these in the transcript? And then ChatGPT said, I'm really sorry. I was actually summarizing the general topic. I wasn't actually summarizing the transcript. And I was like, wait a sec. Why did you then tell me that it was a summary? So I said, okay, can you summarize it based on the transcript? And then it summarized it again, and there was a couple lines in there. I'm like, where are these lines? And it said, again, I apologize. I was actually just talking about the topic in general. I wasn't talking about the transcript that you fed me. And I'm like, that's the thing. That's one thing that, like, we need people to do that stuff. Now, ultimately, the technology will be good enough that it'll pass that. But there's always going to be some error, some element that we have to do. I think that ChatGPT is a remix machine. I think AI is generally remix machines in that they can take things that are conventional and spit them out in different forms and variations for us, which I think is really useful. That's the design process. But I think it can't do surprising things because it won't know whether those things are good or not, or at least not for a long time. And I think that's where we will always have a role. I don't know if I'm right about that, but I think where humans will have a role is always going to be like being able to make random combinations that only we can evaluate if it's good or not. I don't think machines will be able to do that. And again, I could be wrong about that. Maybe that's where the future of Terminator 2 will come from, where Skynet will come from. But, I think that like what's part of my design process when I work with other people is like, yeah, but what if we put it in a fish tank? And I don't think that's the kind of thing that Midjourney is going to do. I think Midjourney is going to do it and we're going to be like, why did you do that? But as teams and collaborators, I think we're going to do that and we're going to see the threads in a way that machines can't. So I'm optimistic for that future. I see that. That's part of my design process now. All these AI tools help with that. They actually help that to be faster. I don't think it's going to replace that anytime soon.
The strategy layer and writing the prompts in a way that actually helps you out. It's like a maximizer in a certain way. Like it really depends on who's writing it, right? And for what purpose. And I think it will inevitably like sunset a lot of jobs. But then for people who are able to wield it, I think there are a ton of gains there. And yeah, it's such a scary future, but here we are.
One of the things that I work on with design systems a lot is whenever I work with a team, one of the first things that I do is I'll take specifically with the designers, not like with most of the team, but the designers specifically. I'll take the designers aside and I'll go, well, listen, before we even build any, buttons and tables and forms and, all the stuff that goes in a design system, like, let's talk about what we're going to do when you as designers no longer have to do those things. So to me, when you take away a job from someone, you have to replace it first. Before you even do the act of taking away the job, you have to figure out what the replacement's going to be. Because if you don't do that, then you leave people out. So to me, that's one of the first steps in doing design system work is going, so what do we do with once we eventually get this promised time back? We're more efficient, we're more consistent, we're all this stuff. What are we going to do with that? Let's plan for that now so that when it happens, we'll be ready for it. But because that's the thing that's mismanaged usually is it happens suddenly. Oh, ChatGPT writes copy for me. Now what am I going to do as a copywriter? Well, I don't have a replacement yet. So now I have to scramble to figure out a replacement. Otherwise, I'm redundant. Otherwise, I get laid off. Otherwise, I'm not valuable anymore. Like that's a tough place to be. So I think the onus is on people like us to start to think now. Well, honestly, we should have started thinking about this years ago, But if not, okay, the next best time is right now to go, what are we going to do? What are we going to replace? Where are we going to be replaced? Right? So if ChatGPT, if Midjourney, if DALL-E, if all these tools that are coming out are going to replace us designing buttons or replace us illustrating or replace us doing motion graphics, what are we going to do instead? What's the next place that we can be valuable so that we're always ahead of that stuff? And I think that if we're not thinking about that, then that really is on us. So I think that's the kind of stuff that we should be thinking about is like, imagine all of this stuff works out in our favor. We don't have to do the boring stuff anymore. We don't have to spend, 10 hours drawing hands because a bot can do that in 10 minutes or 10 seconds. So what am I going to do with that 10 hours back? And I think that we don't spend enough time on that question. I'd love to see I'd love to encourage anybody, to spend more time on that question because I think the answers are really interesting.
That's a great question to ponder on. And I would actually invite you to some sort of debate on that maybe in the future. This can be really interesting. Maybe like a prompt contest of sorts to build something. Like you joined one of those like Figma
totally
design-a-thon things, right? Like
stressful.
how was that for you?
But it's fun, like it's again, like for me, one of the things I'm seeking right now is fun, and those things are fun. They're games. They activate different parts of my brain. I have to learn things for. So I see it as that. And if I look at it through that lens, they're a ton of fun, even though they're very stressful.
Well, I think, Dan, it's been a pleasure like talking to you again after all these years, and Filipino pride. Um, I just have one last question for you. So, to all the fractional workers listening to you right now, all the independent people and people who are going to be freelancers,
Oh man,
what's
so
your advice to
so
them?
much. It's such a big question. I'll try to keep it short. I think that one of the things that freelancers do, and then also studios who are collectives of freelancers, I think the sales pitch is wrong. The sales pitch usually is, oh, we could band together, a few of us, and we could be cheaper than the big agency alternatives. And I'm like, no, what I learned with Superfriendly, and unfortunately, I learned it the hard way, so that's why I want to pass this along. You're not cheaper. You're more valuable. You should actually be more expensive, because what you're doing is you're cutting out overhead. You're also bringing more value to the table by bringing the people who need to be there, right? The thing that the big agencies can't do is they have a ton of overhead, and they they don't have the people who are the right people for the job. So if you run a network-based business, that's the value. The value is you have the person who would be perfect for this thing, not just because they have the skill, not just because, hey, we need a PHP developer and this person writes PHP. It's because they have the experience and they have the background and they have the mindset, and you can curate that, and that is worth way more money. So to me, like whenever I meet with, I advise on a lot of agencies who are collectives who are trying to work on this model right now, and they go, this is our pitch, and I'm like, that's the wrong pitch. The pitch is not that you can be cheaper, even though you can be. You don't have to be though. You can be more valuable, right? You can tell your clients this is how it's actually better for you, and this is why we're just as expensive as that big shop, because you're going to get more from us for that money. It's not that you're going to pay less for us, because I think that's a race to the bottom. So my advice to freelancers, my advice to studio owners, who especially kind of using that fractional model is, be honest about your value. Again, it works out better for you, but realize that your value is not that you can, you don't have an office, so you don't have to pay rent, so you can charge cheap. We pass those savings along to our clients. That's the tip of the iceberg on the pitch. I think the pitch is, here's why we're going to be so much better for you, because we are handpicked for you. And I think that's a much stronger way to really create value.
Value through curation and getting the right people, assembling them without all the overhead costs that the typical agency has. Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you for being on Fractional.
Awesome, Alexis. Thank you for having me. It's great
we'll
to
see you
talk to
again.
you, and really impressed with what you're doing with Swarm and all of that stuff. It's been really great to see. So Filipino pride for sure.
Filipino Pride. Thank you, Dan.